the audacity. Why the helping hand is announced.
Welcome to the regular briefing session of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. This briefing session is for the meeting of August 4th, 2022. We're live and in living color from the Commissioners' meeting room across from Government Center, across from the Forsyth County Jail. I don't know what that indicates one way or the other, but that's part of where we're located. Every member of the board, with the exception of one of our commissioners, has just returned from the National Association of Counties meeting in Denver, Colorado, which was very interesting because a lot of folks don't realize it. There are 100 counties in North Carolina, but nationwide there are 3,062 counties that I know of. And so representatives from all of those counties showed up in Denver, and I know you probably wondered what went on, but it was just an amazing meeting. We all got back safely and sound, and we're about to begin our meeting for the County of Forsyth, and I'll turn the meeting now to our Vice Chairman, Don Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure to be here. Today we're actually briefing for the August 4th meeting, second briefing. This is for the Thursday, August 4th meeting, next Thursday. And prior to reviewing the agenda items for the briefing, we do have two discussion items. One is a North Carolina Association of County Commissioners legislative goals. Gordon Watkins is going to do that in a minute or two. And then we're going to hear an update on the American Rescue Plan Act second round grant reviews from Aisha Carter. So Attorney Watkins, would you please review our process? And appreciate some handouts here. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. I believe that the clerk has distributed to you two documents which you may have all seen before, but one is the Legislative Goals Handbook from the NCACC, and the other one is the current biennium, which is 2021 and 2022, the Legislative Goals Package from NCACC for both the state, most of them are state goals, and then the last page is federal goals. Just as a matter of background, as a refresher, you all know this, but the General Assembly generally meets in biennium, a long session in odd years, followed by a short session in even years. And so at the beginning of each odd year, the long session, just before that happens, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners holds a legislative goals conference. And at that conference, which is usually sometime between, they say, between the end of the short session and the beginning of the long session. I believe the last one that was in person was in January of 2019. In 2021, it was held virtually, but it'll be sometime either the end of this year or the very beginning of next year. The county commissioners from across the state get together and they consider what statewide goals that the association wants to collectively put before the General Assembly. So these are goals that are not Forsyth County goals necessarily that, just apply to Forsyth County. They're very broad statewide goals. And so that's why you've been provided a copy of the current goals, not that we want to do the same goals necessarily, but that'll show you and remind you of how general these are. I'll give you an example. Last year, we forwarded 6 goals to the association. 2 of them were adopted verbatim. One is one that we've done many years, which is support legislation providing flexibility to align K-12 and community college calendars. So that's obviously been a concern for a long time. Another one that actually was acted upon by the General Assembly was our fourth one, which was support legislation allowing counties flexibility in holding remote board meetings, allowing contemporaneous virtual public hearings in order to expeditiously conduct county business during emergencies. If you remember, when the state initially put their remote meeting statute in place, we had to wait a day to accept comments a day after our public hearing, and that was a mess. And the state did come back and fix that. So that was one goal that was actually adopted verbatim from our language, and it was passed by the General Assembly. So, you know, some of these can really have effect. So I'm just bringing this to you as a reminder. The deadline for us to hand in our goals to the association is September 12th. And so our last meeting before that is September 8th. And so if you all could provide me or Dudley or Ashley whatever goals you have in mind, I'll say there's no hard and fast deadline, but I'll say by August 25th, that's 4 weeks from today, then I can try to put them together in something to put before the board to vote on September 8th, because we really are supposed to act as a board, and if we have a resolution, I can hand that in to the association. So as a reminder, you know, primarily we focus on the state goals, but there also are federal goals. So if there are goals you want the NCACC to take up with Congress, we can also propose those. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Any questions for Gordon?
Yes, sir.
Lexington had a proposal, a bill that passed, dealing with property for water and sewer had to be annexed in the city of Lexington, I think. And they said, no, that's not the case anymore. Do other cities in North Carolina have that rule?
About utilities?
Yes. Well, I think the way it was worded, there were three bills. I think this one said Lexington sort of required that if you got water and sewer, if you want, and you were not part of the city of Lexington, you had to become part of the city of Lexington. And I'm just wondering if other cities have that, and would that be something the County Commissioners Association would take up?
I'm not really sure if they do. I mean, I know we have a joint city-county utility,
Right.
So obviously that's not the case for us, but I can't really speak to city water systems.
And do you think that the County Commissioners Association would be, this is not fair, but a proposal that would exempt all county property from cities? In other words, de-annex all county property, including schools, from the regulations of cities?
I think that is something that certainly could be proposed. I'm not sure they would want to bring themselves into conflict with the League of Municipalities. I think that would be very difficult for the league to accept, but that's certainly something that could be proposed.
And how would that go about, how would we go about doing that?
Well, so, and I should have said this at the beginning, these are really broad goals, statewide goals. If we wanted to pursue something ourselves before the legislature, particularly something that affects specifically Forsyth County, we can always do that. That's not really part of this process. But if you wanted a goal like that, you would just write up your proposal, and then this handout, the handbook goes in detail that it'll go up to a committee of the NCACC. They'll consider it. If they like it, it goes to the board, and then the board considers it. So there's a lot of steps it has to go through before it gets to the general folks who vote on it.
So would you require, or would the board require, a unanimous vote from us to go forward with that sort of proposition?
There are different ways you can do it, but generally, yes. Alternatively, the chairman can submit something, but I just can't submit it on my own. I need to have a resolution from the board, and I think that's really what they're looking for. They're really looking for buy-in from the board.
So, Dudley, is it possible to get a number, a dollar amount that the county gives to the city for everything from the cost of schools and other facilities, including some of the stormwater requirements?
Yeah, I think it's mostly stormwater. That's really the largest consideration because, that property's tax exempt, so there's not a tax implication to the city for de-annexation of it.
So-
Stormwater's the biggest one.
Maybe Dr. Martin can answer this. How much does it cost to build a school in the city as opposed to the unincorporated parts of the county for remediation of stormwater?
I can't put a number on it except to say that I do believe, and actually Gordon may know this, I think that the requirements for groundwater treatment basically are different in the city and the county. I think they're different, but they may not be. I'm not positive. I know that there were federal requirements that went into place about 10 years ago that dramatically impacted, school construction, and we happened to be building a school at that time in the city. But I don't know if that would have applied also to the county or not. I just really don't know.
I think many of the environmental requirements apply across the board. They're in cities, they could be more stringent on certain requirements.
Well, the stormwater tax is the obvious issue here, big issue. And the other part is the airport. And Davidson County just went through the de-annexation of the airport in Davidson County out of, I guess, the city of Lexington. And clearly that makes some difference in terms of property tax, not for us or for the land, but for equipment that's at the airplanes at the airport that are housed there.
And that was done as a local act that just affected Davidson County.
Yes, it was. Yes.
The county and the city of Lexington did negotiate on that and reached an agreement on that.
But the legislation did pass,
So,
I think.
yes, it did. It's my understanding that, take Ashley Elementary, it's about to be built, that the city's going to require a substantial amount of money to be paid for stormwater remediation, not including the fee that's charged every year, that could bump the price of building Ashley up to almost $2 million. And I don't know if Chris knows about that or not, but it seems to me that that extra cost to build in the city of Winston for what may not be a reasonable policy just makes it really hard for the county and the citizens to pay for these schools.
I understand that, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether the city requirements, how much more extensive they are than what the federal government requires.
Well, I think that's a question we can answer. We can answer that question.
Just one comment, Mr. Vice Chair, in regards to setting goals for the state. I think the outgoing president at our caucus recently indicated that for a goal to qualify to be supported by the organization, they wanted to have 2/3 support, from the counties across the state. Just food for thought as we go forward with this idea. I think in terms of a count advantage, it's a home run hitter. I don't know if we're going to get 2/3 of the other counties to support it, though, going forward. Just food for consideration there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Aisha Carter is going to talk some about our ARPA review. Along with Kyle Haney. Good.
Good afternoon, County Commissioners. Aisha Carter here to present a ARPA update. Before I get started, you recently received 3 documents, one being the quarterly report that we will be giving to the federal government the beginning of August or the end of this month. The second one is ARPA Round 2 list of applicants and their executive summaries. And then third, a side-by-side view of the Round 2 applicants with the City of Winston-Salem's applications that they received. I will not go into detail about those, but those were provided to you so we can go to talk about them in a later meeting.
Yeah, Aisha, I was going to mention this one. This document is one of the required documents around reporting that the federal government requires. And so a lot of us heard and recently at the conference about the difficulty and the challenges and how much detail was required in that reporting. And so I just, when this got finalized, we submitted it to the federal government, I think yesterday. You get some sense of what they are requiring in that. But the other part about it is just, it's a really good summary because what you have to say to the federal government is, you know, what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? And a lot of what is the impact that we hope to have through all these? And that's what you see in this document. And so I do encourage you to take some time. We are going to try to get it out. It's on the web. We're going to work with Todd to try to get it out in the community a little bit more. You know, it's a regular scheduled reporting requirement. This one takes us through July 31st, 2022. And then I think we have quarterly reporting.
Yeah,
After
quarterly
that.
as well.
Yeah, and so what they wanted obviously was a real narrative around how we were approaching the process and all that. And it really goes back to, you know, while things weren't perfect in our round one, think about it if we hadn't started then, doing what we're doing, and so. You know, we're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor, and then you'll also see, you know, from Aisha, we're making pretty good progress getting the money out there. So,
All right, thank you, County Manager. Get started. So first, I want to start off by giving a recap of round one. As you know, 34 applications were approved for funding. We did have one withdrawal early on after approval. Leaving 33 subrecipients with a total of $27 million awarded. And funds remaining after county budgeted expenses is $21 million for round two. In regards to the status of round one subrecipients, we have two categories, the external subrecipients as well as the internal subrecipients. There are 26 external subrecipients, and as of right now, we have 3 agreements that have been finalized, 10 in contract control awaiting review, and 13 are a work in progress. For those that are a work in progress, I am waiting on information and or documentation from those subrecipients. There are 7 internal subrecipients. 1 agreement has been finalized, and 6 are a work in progress. And as of now, my priority is getting those external ones out the door. For round one communications, we recently had a virtual compliance and invoice training that was held Tuesday, July 26th at 9 a.m. This training is and was for those whose agreements are in contract control. The training covers compliance and monitoring, as well as went over instructions on how to submit invoices and receipts in contract control. Well, enably, not contract control. Subrecipients can submit invoices and associated receipts for reimbursement on or before the 5th day of each month following the agreement being finalized. And again, we do have 3 agreements finalized, so at this point, they can submit invoices and receipts. And for this training, there will be multiple trainings offered, and all of them will be virtual. As for round two, just a recap, you've seen this information before. We received 88 applications, 12 being internal and 76 external, with the amount requested of $90 million. And here is the proposed timeline, also mentioned the last time I presented to you all. And as of today, we are on schedule. This week, we are wrapping up the eligibility review. And next week, the subject matter experts will start reviewing applications to make recommendations. That'll be a 2-week process.
Can you go back
Yes.
one more time? I do have a question real quick. August 22nd. So what is that?
So that's just a week of making sure that we're comparing applications that we received with, local funders, so City of Winston-Salem, or Winston-Salem Foundation, just other funders, just to make sure there's no duplication in funding.
That's fair. Okay.
And really, I think, excuse me, that really August through, those sub-initiative group meetings probably will happen kind of through that third week too. So I think, they'll be wrapping up. There's a little bit of play in the schedule there because obviously that week of the 29th through the 5th we'll be concluding those recommendations with the hope to get them in front of y'all on September 12th.
So Dudley, I assume that our application asks for individuals who have already received funding for somewhere else. From somewhere else, for example, if they've gotten grants from somewhere else, from the city or
Right.
KBR.
Right.
Is it deriving that information?
Yeah, other sources of funding are part of the application that they send in.
They
so-
do put that in their budget.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
But it will be that sort of concurrency review with other funders. Really what we're trying to get is some picture about community impact with, in conjunction with the city, because they've got their process, than ours. And so we hope we can conclude a better view of community impact of a particular recommendation through that, particularly with the annual money that the foundations inject into the community. And so that's what we hope will happen. We did it on one level with round one, but frankly, the city really wasn't in their process at that point in time. And there was so much turnover at the nonprofit side of things. So we didn't do as much of that as we hope to do this round.
I would really be interested in our target. If you're finished, if you can stick to this schedule, which we hope, by September the 5th, I was just looking at our meetings after that. We do have a meeting on the 8th, but we also have a regular meeting on the 22nd, where it's a meeting and briefing. I think that'd be a much better target than go all the way to October. I mean, I just know that we've talked about the timeline running, spending the money, making final commitment, and we may have a little flexibility at the end, but still things have to be under contract.
Right.
And I hope everyone's learned a lot, and that process gets even shorter too. But I think if we could aim for September 22nd, would be a lot better than the October 6th date, kind of, if we could.
All right, I will definitely discuss that with the steering committee. Thank you, Commissioner Martin.
I think at the point we give you the recommendations, you as a board, you'll be driving the schedule from then on out. So that's absolutely possible. That delay was probably our assumption, is that you'd want a little more time. But if you don't need it and you feel great about it, then we'll be ready to move. So, but you'll probably know that when you get there. But at that point, once it's yours, a little bit like the budget we submit. Once we've submitted it, it's yours. We want to make sure you got plenty of time to feel great about it. But if you want to move quick on it, that works too.
Righty. All right, next slide here is the post-eligibility review. And I believe you've also seen this in my last presentation. Here, it shows public health having the most applications, 24 with the most amount requested, and then small business with the least, and then everything else in between. And this is post-eligibility review. After our eligibility teams met and reviewed applications, we determined that 10 of the applications were ineligible for ARPA funding. And I put in bold what categories that changed there. So workforce development, there were a few there, education attainment, arts and tourism, rent utility and financial assistance, and small business support. So those amounts did decrease, and there were $7.7 million in funding ineligible. So again, we are wrapping up eligibility review, and we have not at this point notified the ineligible applicants, but we will do so when we finalize our review justifications in Neighborly. So we'll get that to them within the next week or so. So now we have 10 ineligible, $7.7 million in amount requested, and 78 eligible with $82 million requested. And do note that we do have a fixed amount of funding we're working with, so $21 million available for round 2 at this moment. Our next step is the individual sub-initiative group meetings where the subject matter experts will be making those recommendations. So that will be a 2-week process through the week of August 1st through August 15th. And that is where we stand as of now. Any questions?
I think I asked the question last time about affordable housing grants and the fact that in the last round, we sent all of ours over to the city with the idea that they've kind of been in that business and have actually funded various, parts of it. Is that, and I know you gave us something today. I haven't looked at to see where it shows the city comparisons, kind of where that is. I see Kyle standing there behind you.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So, yes, sir. When we sent those over to the city, we thought there may be some that came back where they wanted to fund them, but wanted the county to participate. So I know that one application is in line with that. The other ones are around housing, but not necessarily a developer subsidy for affordable housing. So some is research around affordable housing. So they're a little bit nuanced and not necessarily just a developer subsidy to build housing.
So I'm not sure I understand what the nuances might be here. I mean,
So when we communicated, what we heard from the board was that the board was not interested in necessarily funding developer subsidies for building affordable housing, but there are organizations who are applying for other types of housing support. Like I said, research around it, or trying to think of what the other ones were, but they weren't necessarily direct developer subsidies. They were more around. I'd actually need to look at the applications, but they didn't fall in the category of what we said that we would not be considering.
So I think we've achieved what I think you wanted to achieve by saying, the affordable housing arena is really, needs to be municipally driven, because we really didn't get very many applications that were of that nature in round 2. There is hopes and expectations that the municipalities they hope that you might consider funding it either through an ARPA process or some other process. They want your involvement in it in a few cases. But I think we've achieved what we thought we wanted to around saying if there's going to be an affordable housing project in Clemens, then the Clemens Village Council really needs to be the leader on that, and they really need to consider using some of their ARPA money for that rather than us, and that's true in any place. And so I think we're there. I think what Kyle's saying is there are a few applications we applied to affordable housing that are of that nature, but it's not developing housing stock. The developing housing stock piece we pushed off to the towns and cities.
okay, I got it.
Yeah. Did I say it right, Kyle?
That's right.
Okay, great.
So Dudley, I do have a question. So this question is relative to the policy for the particular request amount. So I know the last time we had entities that we supported in excess and then we reduced some. So what's the policy moving forward on this round 2?
Yeah, I think we were going to leave the sort of the same set of expectations from the groups, the panels that are reviewing them, that, if they may get into the middle of the application and say, well, we want to fund that, but we don't want to fund this. That's where that came from. So, and I think that'll happen again in round 2, unless you want us to have sort of an all or nothing approach to it, and we could do that. But we didn't do that in round 1, and we weren't expecting to do that in round 2.
So I don't have a problem with the subject matter experts. Whatever comes out of committee needs to be recognized by this board. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I want to know what the policy is, because I don't want to feel like that there was some systemic racism going on some applications.
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah, and we'll try to be real clear, and so try to remember this, Aisha, that when those recommendations come back, we tie it back to what they asked for and what we said we felt like we needed to fund. Could it be possible it's arbitrary that, somebody asked for $1 million to do something, we say, well, given the limited amount of money and the other stuff, we'll fund it, but we don't think we'll diminish the program if we funded it half of that, or we'll get we'll get half of that. And so, but we'll try to be real clear when we reduce it and why in the recommendation.
I'm happy you have somewhat of a definition with it, because from my perspective, affordable housing is strictly in this, and it was in the last election, a political thing. I mean, tell me what affordable housing is. Who is it for? How much is it worth? I mean, it's like walking through a minefield, and I think the people who brought that two-word phrase up, affordable housing, probably meant it that way, but I think you're on the right track. Good luck.
Thank you.
I had two quick questions, Aisha, before you leave the hot seat there. They'll be very brief, though. We have a $80 million demand on $20 million supply.
Yeah.
That's the big picture, right?
Yeah,
So it's going to be a little hardy going forward, I'm sure, just on perception.
right.
Have any other funds returned back to the county, like that $300,000, because they decided they could not have the internal controls to really comply with the federal guidelines? Anyone else returned any funds thus far since our last report?
At this moment, no.
No, okay. Any requests to use funds other than the reimbursement methodology from any of these nonprofits at this point?
As in like newer ones or the ones that's already stated that they wanted?
Both, actually.
So at this point, 3 individuals have stated they may have a hardship.
Okay.
And they need to provide proof of that hardship to receive funding on a non-reimbursement basis. At this point, no one else has stated so.
Okay. Yeah, I want to be clear that we're clear with the public in terms of the expected procedures.
Right,
Because reimbursement for some nonprofits could be an issue,
right.
period.
Yes.
Because they just don't have the funds in-house to conduct that kind of expense going forward. So just as long as we're transparent, let them know this is a process. I felt bad because I didn't share that information because I was not aware of it when I was in the community advocating ARPA funding as an option for many nonprofits. So I'm feeling a little bit guilty right now.
Okay.
So let's make sure we're very transparent and let them know this is a process so there's no further heartache, because I get the calls.
Will do.
Okay, thank you very much, Aisha.
No problem.
Any other questions? Thank you, Aisha. Ready to turn the meeting over to the county manager.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and good afternoon, board members and staff and guests. We do have some business items for consideration this afternoon. I'll go ahead and dive into the agenda. We have 2 public hearing matters. Chris Murphy will lead off with the public hearing on the zoning petition of R.S. Parker Development, LLC. You have seen this because it has been in front of you in a prior cycle, but I'll turn it over to Chris. There you go.
And I apologize, the slideshow has gotten so large, I actually couldn't send a PowerPoint, I had to send a PDF over. So this will be new for me, doing this from a PDF. But yeah, this has been briefed. It was briefed back in the June cycle and was continued. And Kirk Erickson was here, and I said 2 weeks ago to kind of update the commissioners on where we are. I will just go over a little bit of brief summary. This is a request for a special use district rezoning from YR Ag and RS30 to YRS, RS15S, and RM5S for about a 319 acre piece of property on the west side of Idols Road, south of Mallard Trail, adjacent to Tanglewood. There we go. And that is the location map. You'll see the subject property. They're labeled F1617. They're south of Tanglewood Park. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, it's a mix of 3 different zoning districts, proposed for 3 different zoning districts through a special use district rezoning process. Same property, same image shown, highlighted, the outline shown on the aerial photo. You'll notice Tanglewood Park to the north and west of the subject property, the championship course there adjacent to it. Again, an image of the subject property. This is looking north on Idols Road. The subject property is to the left. And this is looking at where the property adjoins Tanglewood Golf Course there on the northwest side of the subject property. This is the overall site plan. Again, it's a mix of both townhomes and single-family homes under a PRD development with the main access off of Idols Road and interconnectivity and amenities, parks, and other recreational activities spread throughout the development. This is kind of concentrated in on the northern portion along Idols Road. The portion where my mouse is, if I can get it where I want it to be, these are the townhomes. So when you come into the main road off of Idols, you go to the townhome portion of the development is to the right, and you take a left to go to the single-family homes. And the main amenity center, the clubhouse and pool, is at the terminus of that main road off of Idols. This is kind of the middle section of the development where you're transitioning out of the townhomes going to the south and southwest to some single-family homes. And those all those lots, besides what was shown on the northern side of the entrance road, all these are single-family homes. The colors do represent some different lot sizes and dimensions, but these are all single-family homes. And again, this is the area where the development is closest with the road and homes to the existing Tanglewood Park and the golf course. And this is where the project transitions to kind of the more open area to the extreme southwest, with the Yadkin River being off the image to further to the left or to the west. I will note that we've been continuing to work with the petitioner on revising the site plan during the June briefing on this item, as well as the July briefing. The commissioners expressed concerns about the relationship between the development and Tanglewood Park. This item, again, was continued to your August 4th meeting, which is where the hearing will be held. The developer has had discussions with county management and park staff. We've continued those discussions. Some of the things that we are working on are some potential added conditions related to security, fencing, buffering, and the spacing between the subject property and the county-owned Tanglewood Park shall be in substantial conformity with some plans that they are continuing to refine. I will actually show those in a second. But, basically that buffering and fencing and spacing plan will be part of the adopted consent to conditions record. Another potential condition that we are working on with the developer is an acknowledgement of the impact that Tanglewood Park activities could have upon this neighboring property, dealing with errant golf shots, noise and light associated with the Tanglewood Festival of Lights and those kind of things. So again, we're still trying to work through those issues, but we hope to have that 100% buttoned up early next week, so we can send the written consent conditions to the commissioners and have that before you for the public hearing next Thursday. This is what I did allude to. This is the overall buffering and fencing site plan. They are looking at doing this image actually refers to the existing cattle fencing that's out there, which is in very poor shape. They looked at it in one particular place, but Mike Anderson with Parks and Rec knows that this is not in good shape. So we actually have met with them. They are in agreement to do we're not exactly sure of the height, a 5 or a 6 foot tall NCDOT right-of-way type fence to keep folks from crossing onto the golf course in areas where we don't want them to, which is along their entire border. They are also in the process of finalizing what a brick wall would look like in this area if you follow my mouse. They are also finalizing the buffer yard plantings along this line, which is adjacent to the exit for the Festival of Lights. They're proposing to put a 20-foot type 3 buffer yard, which is the most dense type of planting, up that slope as far as they can to provide that kind of visual buffer and hopefully alleviate some of those lighting and noise concerns from the Festival of Lights. And under the final site plan consideration, there was some information mentioned regarding concerns about the backs of these townhomes along Idols Road. The requirement in the ordinance for a PRD of this type along that type of road is a 100-foot open space buffer, and it has to have a landscape plan as part of that. They actually, since this is going to be their main entrance, want to actually provide a landscaping plan above and beyond that. So they're also going to be working on that, and we hope to have all of that finalized prior to the commissioner's public hearing next Thursday. These next images are just kind of blowing up those areas. I'm going to kind of rush through these because, again, we are still working to finalize those details. The image at the top is similar to what an NCDOT right-of-way barrier is, and this would essentially provide that security between the proposed development in Tanglewood Park so we wouldn't have folks entering onto the park property and potentially getting hit by golf balls and those kind of things. The image on the bottom part was a fence elevation that was submitted earlier this week through our discussions that we have had with the petitioner. They would like to, this is a larger image, they would like to substitute that vinyl fence that looked like a rock wall with this a brick wall of this type of design. It may be a slightly different color, but this would be the design of what they would propose as a brick wall in the area where they can't provide the landscape buffer. And then let me go back to the slideshow. The just kind of summarizing the project, again, I'm trying to hit what the main slideshow is, but kind of what we've been working on over the last several weeks. With access to public sewer, Legacy does recommend that it's appropriate for GMA 4 areas, which are known as future growth areas, to be treated as GMA 3 areas for the purposes of recommended densities. So with the sewer available, this is appropriate to have more GMA 3 type densities. This request will increase the variety of housing types in the area, which is a stated goal of Legacy because they will provide both single family and townhomes as part of the project. A very large percentage of this site is left undisturbed or proposed to be undeveloped open space. And additionally, they do have pocket parks and programmed recreation areas interspersed throughout the development. This was heard at the Planning Board at their May 12th, 2022 public hearing, so a couple months ago. There were numerous speakers in opposition. Their concerns did center around the incompatible density. They had traffic concerns primarily along Middlebrook Drive and the intersection of Middlebrook with Idols Road. There were some stormwater concerns, and there was some concern about cut-through traffic and congestion, again, on Middlebrook. The Planning Board took that information under advisement and then recommended under a 6-3 vote to recommend approval of this request to the commissioners. And just as a final note, the site plan does meet UDO requirements. I know that's a lot of information. I know there's still a lot of uncertainties hanging out there. We hope to have all of that buttoned up, like I said, early next week so we can have the written consent to conditions to the commissioners, have all this information incorporated into the PowerPoint to give you a definitive answer on what things will look like exactly. I'm available to answer any questions. Gordon and Dudley, and I'm not sure if Mike's here. I haven't turned around to look. Mike is here as well. We've met with the developer. I know the developer's here. They're also available to answer questions should you have them.
Did everybody have the same comfort feeling you and Mike have after the opposition was made known to the board and to y'all?
Well, again, from a comfort level, staff did recommend approval of this project to begin with. Whenever I'm here in front of the board, I'm representing the interests of the planning board. The planning board also did recommend approval. I haven't heard anything that has caused me to feel differently related to the staff's recommendation. Again, the planning board did recommend approval. I know that based on some of the concerns expressed by the commissioners, we did want to make sure that this development would be compatible with Tanglewood and ensure, that we could make this development the best neighbor to Tanglewood it could be, ensuring we didn't have attractive nuisance type situations where folks were coming onto the golf course, getting hit by errant golf balls, trying to make sure that we had buffers built in where homes couldn't be hit by golf balls, trying to allay concerns with the Festival of Lights. So, again, we've been working extensively with the developer to try to address those concerns that the commissioners brought up. But again, the planning board did recommend approval, and I haven't changed what they said at this point because it hasn't gone back to them.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions?
One question, Mr. Vice Chair. Chris, on the proposed brick wall that you showed us previously, about how tall is that wall? Ballpark figure.
I'm not sure how tall that wall is. What we had talked to them about was doing a 6-foot tall wall.
6 feet.
Yes, sir. And again, that was just an image that they said, this is the kind of wall this is what we would like for it to look like, the type of design with kind of like the bump out columns and some of the architectural interest with it. It could be a slightly different color. And again, I think that the goal is a 6-foot tall wall.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right. Agenda item 2 is a public hearing to consider the submission of an application to the North Carolina Department of Commerce Rural Economic Development Division to apply for and accept if awarded a rural building reuse grant. You've got an associated resolution that authorizes the submission of the application. Hassani Mitchell is here. He reviewed it last Thursday. He can step back through that again if you want him to, or we can be good. What's your pleasure? Feel comfortable that
I'm good.
Good, okay. Let me say, before Hassani leaves, you probably saw him, so Hassani started with us in early January, but he has been recognized as Winston-Salem by a number of folks in that under 40 leadership awards from Greater Winston-Salem. Hassani, stand up because you see him, and he's been recognized that by, and we're just proud of him. And we probably get 6 months of credit for it. Maybe City of Winston gets the other credit. I don't know, but we're glad to have you, Hassani.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we knew when we hired you, we had a superstar, and now you've been recognized, so very good. Agenda item 3 is a resolution adopting a naming policy for Forsyth County facilities. Damon had reviewed that one last week, but Gordon may probably be good for Gordon to update you on that.
Yes, Damon did address this with you at a discussion session. It has not changed since then, but basically, as the board had directed him, he's prepared a naming policy, of course, for your consideration for Forsyth County facilities. It would make clear that you, the board, are in charge of naming, and the process would be whenever someone had a suggestion, be it an outside group or one of you or staff, that would go through a 90-day vetting process by the county manager and staff, and before it would be considered, so it wouldn't be a snap decision. The naming would not take place until you, the board, had approved it, and there are some other regulations about who would and would not be eligible. For example, for employees, it would not be a current employee would not be eligible, and the employee would need to be retired for 5 years before that would happen. The name would stay with the facility, but if the facility were demolished, then the name presumably wouldn't go to a new facility unless the board voted to do that. And unique buildings such as the government center and the courthouse wouldn't have a name on them, but a particular room could be named, for example, after a judge, as they do now. And so this is not only for buildings, but it's also for, whatever facilities the county has, which might include spaces, land trails, water bodies, et cetera. So this is a suggested policy for you, and that Deputy Manager Sanders Pratt has put together, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
I think the only thing I'd like to offer to this is that I like the 90-day period. I like all the components, but I think having an opportunity for the public to at least maybe make an alternate suggestion. It's kind of like once the request is made, however it gets to the county manager, that there's an opportunity for, a lot of people don't know that something may be named or isn't named, and they say, well, I really think it ought to be named after such and such for this reason, and have an opportunity to just say it. Now, I realize in that 90-day period, people could come during normal communications to the board and do that, but I think having just a formal opportunity during that 90-day period, it could be at the beginning or it could be at the end, to make other suggestions for other names if they wanted to do it. And I'll tell you that we had a policy, something like that in the school board, and I remember Frank B. Morgan Elementary School, that someone had suggested a name. I think a school board member maybe made a comment, some other people, and when we had folks come in from the public, we said it was mentioned in a meeting, mentioned in the paper, and then a couple weeks later, there were people, in fact, Frank B. Morgan was not on anybody's list, and nobody knew him. And actually, the folks came in and talked about it, talked about his history, his legacy at Clemens, and all the things he had done. And the board said, wow, man, this is great. And the school was named after it. And I think it was very, very appropriate. He was still alive. And that would have never happened had there not been some opportunity for the public, to come forward. And I think that's a helpful thing to do.
Why don't you say that it would require what we call a public hearing for
I
that
thought
to
of that.
take place, which is just to say a calendar item.
We could certainly do that.
Anybody object to that?
Yeah, no, I don't, Vice Chairman, but I do want to be clear about something. So, and Richard, I'm not picking on you. I know that we have that Richard Linville complex. Although it does in number 6 indicate employees, but it doesn't really say anything about previous commissioners. So how is that being handled?
So commissioners,
Because we're not
a space
employees.
could be named after a sitting commissioner.
A sitting commissioner? What about
Or
one that's
former.
maybe not,
I'm sorry.
one that may not be here anymore?
That would be fine too.
Fine, too.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is only for employees that have to be retired for 5 years.
I just wanted to be clear.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, we've got approval of the minutes for the meeting of July 14th. They are
They were sent out this morning.
this morning. Okay, so you've got those. Very good. All right, so we've got our regular business items. You've got a couple of budget and finance items. Item 5 is an amendment to the FY 22-23 budget ordinance. It increases revenues and appropriations for the Forsyth County Department of Public Health for Women's and Children's Health Section Nutrition Services. Adam Pendlebury will come up and review this one.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, this is a budget ordinance amendment to increase appropriations to the Department of Public Health in the amount of $37,250. These funds can be used for the Women, Infant, and Children's Nutrition Program. I'd be happy to take any questions you have. It's on top of over $1 million we already get for that program. So we'd always take more, but we're happy to have it. You're welcome.
Thanks, Adam. Item 6 is an amendment to the 2020 Motor Vehicle and Mobile Equipment Replacement Capital Projects Ordinance. Christopher Ong from our Budget and Management Shop will review this.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So this item is to amend the 2020 Motor Vehicle Replacement CPO to appropriate payments in the amount of $81,700. And this is basically for the replacement of emergency vehicles in the sheriff's office account. There were 5 accidents over the previous fiscal year, and 4 of those were 4 of those were at fault. One of those were, I'm sorry, 2 of those were not at fault. 3 of those were at fault. And so those will go through the subrogation process for reimbursement. And essentially, this action you'll take will appropriate $81,700 back into the account to replace vehicle costs. Any questions?
I do have a question, if you don't mind. Were some of these losses because of pursuit of individuals or just daily accidents?
I'm not sure. I didn't get that much detail. Basically, I just got information that was on the insurance check.
Yeah, our chief deputy is here with us, and he is all-knowing about all of that. So come on up, Rocky, if you will.
I like people who know everything.
That's right.
This will be easy.
Hi, Rocky.
Good
I just
afternoon.
wanted to know if the claim loss was relative to pursuit or just everyday accidents.
Yeah, we have had, probably I would say a third of those could be pursuit related, maybe not total damage, but some damage to where we were either rubbed in the side or something like that. But we have had some accidents due to pursuits. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. Any other questions on that? All right, very good. Agenda item 7 is a resolution authorizing execution of the necessary documents to accept U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, State Criminal Alien Assistance, or SCAP funds. Get an associated amendment to the budget ordinance, and Major Whitaker is going to come up and tell us all things about SCAP.
Good afternoon, how are y'all? I'm here today to brief on a resolution authorizing the execution of necessary documents to apply and accept the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, Criminal Assistance Program funds for the fiscal year of 2020, slightly behind. As a result of these funds, I'm also seeking an amendment to the 22-23 fiscal budget to appropriate those funds in accordance to the Department of Justice Reauthorization Act of 2005, which requires that these funds must be used for correctional purposes only. Pretty much have to be used at the jail only. Any questions?
So what were you, do you think, it's 103,000, what were you going to use these for, you think, this year?
Well, initially I had applied for, we have an issue with shanks, and I had
Yeah.
tried to attempt to put in the budget
I remember
property
that.
boxes to prevent shanks being made, which got cut. So the initial one I'm going to use to purchase those property boxes.
Okay. Seems like a little bit lower funding level than we've seen in past years.
It is mainly, it's associated with the status of someone in the United
Right.
States, and due to there's only a handful of charges that we can research by general statute. Before we were researching anybody that was foreign born, but the sport changed as far as the immigration. So at this point, we only run those for DWIs or felonies. And that's where this fund, that's the reason your fund's pretty much cut in half.
All right. How's your population over there?
I'm sorry,
What's the jail population today?
716, I believe, when I left this morning.
So that has crept up a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all for
All right. Thank you.
what you do. Appreciate it. All right. Agenda, we got some contract. We have a fair number of contracts. Item 8 is a resolution authorizing a revised budget and an agreement between Forsyth County and the state of North Carolina. It's this Division of Health and Human Services, Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services. Denise Price is going to come up and review that one, and also number 9, which is the Twin City Harm Reduction one. Denise.
Good afternoon. So on June the 23rd, you authorized entering into an agreement with North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the contracting the amount of $12.5 million for crisis services. That agreement included a budget that showed the revenue coming in and then expenditures lasting through December of 2024. This is to approve a revised budget that extends those services through 2026. And DHHS has confirmed that we can do that. So we're excited to be able to extend the life cycle of those services. Any questions?
All right, thank you. So in item 9 is a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract between Forsyth County and Twin City Harm Reduction Collective to provide services.
So you may recall that in 2019, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services awarded multi-year funding for harm reduction services. We expected that funding to end. It has now been extended through May of 2023. So what we'd like to do is extend the contract with Twin City to last through the life cycle of the funding.
How much is the funding, Denise?
$94,915.
1,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. All right. Do you want to say anything about some of the work? I've seen some advertisements about some of the information you're trying to collect on the process that we're going through with opioids.
I'd love to, absolutely.
Yeah.
So our goal is to get as much feedback as we can from the community, from all segments of the community, about how they would like to see the report come forth with recommendations for how to spend opioid settlement dollars. I looked this morning, I think we've got 152 responses in a couple of days, but each day I see that exponentially growing as more and more people get these links and the QR code in their hand to be able to access that survey. So if I can take just a moment to say that survey is posted on our Facebook page. Go out there, look at it, give us your input. We want to know what the residents of Forsyth County have to say about what to do with those dollars.
And what's the cutoff date, Denise? What's the cutoff date to respond to the survey?
Great question, August the 10th.
August 10th.
And Denise, what other avenues are we using in terms of marketing other than the social media page?
So we have sent out to every network that we can think of for email addresses saying, please get this out to folks. We've got posters posted, more flyers being dropped off at locations. Okay. If there is anyone that would like to have flyers or access, they can give me a call directly. It's 336-703-2781.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. All right, Rocky Joyner is going to come up and talk to us about a resolution ratifying and authorizing the execution of the interlocal agreement between Forsyth County and the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education for school resource officers.
All right, good afternoon again. This resolution would authorize execution of the interlocal agreement between Forsyth County on behalf of the Sheriff's Department and the Forsyth County Board of Education for our school resource program for the following year. This consists of 39 officers that would have 8 supervisors built in. It's based on the sort of the past few years methodology. Schools are paying for 100% of the salaries and benefits. We'll be using the same like turned-in card. And the annual estimated cost for this is just under $3.9 million. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Question I have is the legislature approved a number of, well, it wasn't clear from the summaries I've seen about what dollars for middle schools, for safety for schools. It's a fairly good chunk of money statewide. Part of it appears to be for maybe middle school resource officers. I'm not sure all that. Have you all looked at where, because it seems to me some of that could in fact offset some of the costs that we are providing already for middle schools in particular.
Yeah, I know they're getting some. I think we have talked to them about maybe trying to expand, not us, but the schools expand some of their security into the elementary schools using that funding. And we've been in discussion about how we would, be glad to help them. I don't know if it's something that we could pick up as a sheriff's department, that many positions, but that would be a place that security is needed. But we hadn't talked about supplementing our contract with that.
Well, I think knowing that's pretty important, and I'd certainly like to hear from the school board before they think about expanding their services. And I mean, the assumption of the dollars that are allocated to the school district for them to make a decision is based on a particular purpose of resource officers in middle and high schools. It's not to have it in elementary schools. And I think if I'd be real interested in their, it seems that if that money is supplanted by the state, then the state money should be used. And if there wants to be something else, that's like a new budget request to me. So perhaps we need to be communicating with the school board about that particular issue.
When I read it, and I may be wrong, but it did seem that the dollars were going to flow to the schools for them to make decisions at their level, and then if they contracted with us, and that's what would happen. I will follow back up. Actually, I've got a meeting with the staff at the association. I'll mention that today to get them to find out what the expectations are and how that's going to work. So I'll try to find out at that level because they're down there, and so.
Yeah, my guess is they have discretion and some discretion.
Yeah.
And within that discretion, it's awfully convenient to go for new things instead of paying for some things that somebody else is already paying for you, when in fact, that may not be an intent, for example. It's kind of switching dollars, if you will.
I'll find out what's able to be found out at the state level about that.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
I had one question, Mr. Vice Chair. I want to be clear on what I heard, Rocky. The $3.8 million will be paid by the school system for these officers?
Yes, basically, it would be paid from the school system to the county, and then the county would pay us.
It's part of their appropriation. So we literally send the money over there, and then they contract, and then the money comes back over here. So yeah,
In the end, I get it.
it's a left pocket, right pocket kind of thing, but that's how it works. So.
Okay, thank you.
It's whether the first pocket needs to be as big as it is. As deep as it is. Deep is the correct terminology.
Okay.
Interesting that he
All
would
right.
say that.
Thank you, Rocky. Appreciate it. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. I know it's tough. Agenda item 11 is a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Seth Palmater, I don't know if I said that right, of Motivated Metal for the design, creation, and installation of an outdoor sculpture for the Forsyth County Public Library's Clemens branch. You notice Damon is not here today because he didn't want to talk about public art, given everything that's been talked about. So he leaves James out here to talk about a public art project. So good job.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This item before you is a consideration for approval of a recommendation from the City County Public Art Commission, supported by county and city staff, to select artist Seth Palmater, doing business as Motivated Metal, to complete a public art installation in the courtyard of the Clemens Branch Library. The Commissioners authorized staff to offer donor naming opportunities at the Clemens Branch, and the community from Clemens donated over $87,000 towards the construction effort there. And $55,000 of those donated funds are going to be used for the design, creation, and installation of an approximately 15-foot tall stainless steel sculpture on a concrete base in the courtyard there behind the library. The sculpture will depict butterfly silhouettes in an ascending pattern. The public art installations for the Central Library, Kernersville Branch Library, and now the Clemens Branch Library have all cost between $55,000 and $60,000. At Central Library, we had the Timeless Purpose book, which was $55,000. At Kernersville Branch Library, we have Honeybee Curiosity Sculpture, and then we also have the Honeycomb Bike Racks that were a cost of $60,000. And proposed for Clemens is the Pollinator Sculpture for $55,000. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, and there are pictures of the proposed art in the agenda packet as well, which appears to be in good taste. Yeah.
Butterflies.
Not dandelions.
A weed killer.
Just one question, please. What's the final number in terms of cost to the county for this?
The contract is $55,000.
That's the total.
But there are no county tax funds used. It's all donated funds. So. There are no.
That's very important.
All right, James, you made it. Good job. All right, thank you. All right. Item 12, we have some budget ordinance amendments or items related to software. Cindy Firkin with DSS is going to handle the first one. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of a second amendment between Forsyth County and Benovate Incorporated, and it's the providing hosting and maintenance service for the Neighborly software application. So, Cindy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present our request for authorization for a second amendment between Forsyth County and Benevitt, doing business as Neighborly Software. Neighborly Software application provides enrollment, administration, and reporting of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program known as ERAP. And we have had a partnership with Benevitt since October of 2021. The software provides unlimited licenses. The fees are based on 0.6% of the allocation from federal or state, and the fees for this usage of the software are included in the grant amount. The amendment to the Pandemic Response Special Revenue Fund to appropriate the $12,618,151.03 for additional ERAP assistance was approved by the board on June 23, 22. The second amendment is a not-to-exceed amount of $75,710 for services through June 30th of 2023, which will cover the remainder of the ERAP program. Grant allocations are dispersed to the county in increments, and Benevit will invoice based on 6% of the current allocation. Forsyth has received the first increment, $2.9 million of the state ERA2 allocation, and additional increments are forthcoming. The program is expected to conclude by December of 2022 or soon thereafter. And currently there are 2,497 applications going through the verification and payment process for emergency rental assistance. Total contracts not to exceed $191,305 payable in installments. And this consists of $19,238 in federal grant funding, $172,067 in state grant funding, and 0 county funds.
Cindy, I just want to say, we found this software that's really driven a lot of our efforts, both in the ARPA side and also in the ERAP thing. And I can tell you, and I think I'm not exaggerating, had we not found that software, there's no way we could have stood up a program that rapidly that was that effective. That software just kind of came to us at the right time in this organization. And, normally I'm not that enthralled with a software tool like that. Most of the time they're just aggravating and you can see the value, but in this particular case, I'm not sure we could have done what we've done both in ERAP and in ARPA without it. And just trying to manage all the stuff. And if you think about it, we have a relatively small staff, and we've basically got one ARPA. Got a lot of people doing a lot of ARPA work, but we got one ARPA person. So, and then the DSS, y'all have done it with I don't think you had any additional positions.
We have a couple of temporary staff.
Yeah, so it's sort of amazing. So my hat's off to you. I mean, it really is.
Good.
Any questions?
Just a 30-second comment. Thank you for what you've done with the ERAP funds. I've literally walked people downstairs when you had the office or the desk downstairs to assist them in whatever capacity I could. I do get a question every now and then about, will there be an opening process for additional apps? And my response has been, not at this moment. Could you just confirm? Okay. All right, then. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. All right. Agenda items 13, 14, and 15 are all Gary Kuntz's. He's going to come up and he'll deal with each one of them. The first one is a resolution approving a contract for the construction of fiber optic infrastructure at Tanglewood Park. And so you can introduce them and I'll read them off as we go.
Okay, sounds good. The first one is for construction of fiber optics. This is related to the clubhouse project in as much as the clubhouse is the center of our fiber optic world at Tanglewood Park. So with the demolition of that, we have to move that those operations. So rather than trying to establish a temporary location for that, then try to move back in when the new clubhouse is built, we found an opportunity to make a permanent move just one time. So in order to do that, we've got to install some new fiber optic cabling out there. We did stick this out to bid. We sent out a request for quotes on May 10th, had a pre-bid walkthrough May 16th, and with bids due May 25th. We did have 4 bidders that bid on that job. We had one of the bidders, which was not the low bid, but we had one of the bidders that did not meet specifications, so they was non-responsive. Of the 3 remaining, actually the lowest bidder, well, actually, that was not the lowest bidder, was it, Steve? We had one of the bidders that was a low bid, actually, that withdrew their bid due to insurance requirements. So we had 2 viables after that, which is KNC Technologies is the lowest responsible bidder. They are also our MWBE proposer in this construction project. So this action would award the contract for this construction project to KNC Technologies for $88,035.41. Be glad to take questions. I got my expert, Steve James, which is my construction manager.
Is that a local company?
KNC, Steve? I don't know that. I didn't do the bid, so I apologize. I brought the people that do know. The question is, KNC a local company?
Yes, sir, they are.
Where are they located at? In Winston or?
They are in Winston, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Gary, could I ask you an unrelated question, but it pertains to Tanglewood? We've received a couple emails about Wi-Fi at campgrounds. They're so complimentary about the campgrounds except for Wi-Fi. Is there an update on that?
We do. We have a project for that, I believe, is in the Pago. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll find something around October-ish from a funding standpoint to know if we can move forward with an improvement out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It might be wise to go ahead and do some design bid work on that a little bit so we can.
Might be.
I'm sensing some eagerness on that one, Gary, and so.
So my plan is to be prepared that when we do find out what the Pago funds are, that we can have a resolution before you guys fairly quickly. So I do plan on doing the design work and the bidding piece to that prior to October. So we'll be ready to pull the
In the
trigger.
budget, there was $200 and some odd $1,000 put aside for that project.
It was actually in that list of potential Pago projects is where it was.
And I was under the impression from somebody who was staying there, I don't know what facts they have, but they said that somebody, I think like AT&T or somebody was already out there looking around or making plans. Would that be possible?
We have been working on the Tanglewood Wi-Fi upgrade project for the last 4 to 5 years. It's been a start and stop kind of deal where we do some design work, we get bids, and it's too much money and we don't move forward with it. So it's entirely possible that we've had folks out there recently.
You're talking about the whole park, right?
No,
Which would
the
make
campground.
sense, by the way.
No, we're talking specifically about the campground area. There's nothing on the radar at this point to do a park-wide Wi-Fi project.
Okay, thanks.
That would take a lot of money. If you guys want to spend it, I'd be glad to do it for you, but I don't have that keyed up. It's there are certainly ways to do that because of the vast open spaces. The infrastructure to feed the required access points is extremely costly.
Well, I didn't send the email to Mike, which I really should have, but this guy was so complimentary of the campground, and he said he had been all over the country, and that our campground was top of the list except for Wi-Fi.
I understand that. We're working on fixing that, so I just need the money.
All right. I believe if there's any way possible, you got it, so I think we're okay. Agenda item 14 is a resolution authorizing the execution of software service and subscription agreement between Forsyth County and Presidio Network Solutions to provide secure endpoint patch stuff.
So this item and the next item before you are cybersecurity related issues or ways to improve our security posture for Forsyth County and the citizens thereof, the data that we maintain for them. This specific resolution supports we call it a secure endpoint management solution that gives us the ability to patch and update endpoints or PCs predominantly, no matter where they are. So right now, the way our system works today is they have to be in office to get updates. So since COVID hit and we started shuffling people around, we've ended up landing at a spot where all the equipment is not brought back into an inside network in a timely manner, so they may miss a patch or miss an update. And this does provide a little bit of risk exposure for the county. So this solution will take care of that in as much as we can patch these systems no matter where they're at. So you don't have to bring them back into the county and on an inside network. Kind of fosters what I'm trying to build is I call it a borderless network. So it really doesn't matter where you're at. we'll be able to patch and manage these machines.
Yeah, and these were all part of a lot of work that went into security upgrades as we were heading to this year's budget. So these were all included.
That is correct. And this particular item is a state contract purchase. We did solicit bids just to validate and verify that that was the best vehicle to move forward with. On the resolution is the breakdown of the pricing we received back, which state contract was the lowest pricing in this case. The total amounts for $139,968. That is for a 3-year. That's a 3-year cost. We have funds budgeted in our current budget for year one of that. So the only thing we'll be expending this year is the year one funds.
All right, go ahead and talk about E+ if you want to as well.
Okay. So the next item is a resolution between the county and E+ for Secure Access Service Edge. That's kind of a fancy way of securely connecting users back to the county to provide services. So the item previous to this took care of how we can patch machines and, from a physical standpoint, secure updates and so forth. This agreement is for software that allows the user to access resources no matter where they're at, so we can do that in a secure manner. So today, we have a firewall that if you're inside one of our facilities, we can securely filter and weed out the bad stuff on your connections in and out of the county. But if you're accessing our systems from, say, your home network or somewhere that's not a county facility, you're not going through that firewall. So we don't really have a way today to manage that security for those endpoints. So this solution would allow us to extend that. It's essentially a virtual or cloud-based firewalling technique that we can push our policies and the safety nets that we have in place. Again, push it out to the end user. So no matter where you connect from, you still can access the resources you need. It helps the end user from the standpoint that our staff doesn't have to figure out, or they will not have to figure out what they need to launch, and there's no VPN client to launch or anything like that. Their stuff just works. And so that's part of, this tool helps us to deliver a more seamless experience for our end users. So no matter if you're in the office or you're home or you're at Starbucks or you're at the Denver airport, you bring up your computer and your stuff just works. That's what we're after, is a way to make staff more efficient and to do that in a secure and safe manner. This is a state contract purchase as well. We did go out to bids to validate state contracts, and on the resolution of this one, I did break out the annual cost. Again, this is a 3-year pricing. We will just pay year one, and those funds are currently budgeted in our budget. Glad to answer any questions or anything that you guys may have.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you keeping us from getting hacked.
I didn't say I'm keeping from getting hacked. I'm working on making it more safe. Just want to clarify.
Told me you were going to keep us from getting hacked. So
I'm going to do my best to help that.
Thank you.
No promises.
All right. Item 16 is a resolution authorizing execution of a contract amendment between Forsyth County and South Data Incorporated for printing services. John Burgess is going to review this, but he is followed by Tim Suji because they are conspiring in this printing effort, and so they both have some pretty important short-term printing needs, as you can imagine.
That looks like a 1-2 punch. It works.
Tough characters. So, yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Your approval of this item provides a plan for a continuation of needed printing services for both Tax Administration and Board of Elections while we evaluate a new print processing and mailing RFP results. You may recall that our two departments joined together 2 years ago for an RFP for printing and mailing services. The result of that was a 4-year fixed printing price contract. So you may wonder why we're here today. Our contract commenced July 2020, which correlates all too well with the COVID pandemic. Over the past 2 years, our print supplier was hit with several rounds of documented paper cost increases, which also coincided with a national paper shortage. On March 11th, 2022, we received an email from our printing supplier that effective April 1st, all printing services, should we continue to send them printing jobs, would contain a 22% increase in printing costs. In effect, the vendor was saying that they could not perform the work at the contracted price. The timing of this information was also impactful. We knew that 172,000 tax bills needed to be mailed in July. Actually, those are getting ready to be mailed either tomorrow or Monday. Meaning that from the time we officially knew of the situation, we did not have time to create and send out a new RFP to get a potentially new vendor up to speed operationally by the time the tax bills needed to go out. We have since sent out a printing and mailing services RFP, and the submissions actually came in today at noon, and I've not been able to get a hold of them to look at the results, but they did come in at noon today. Knowing that our operations needed to continue without interruptions and that we needed to hold on to our original pricing as long as possible, we came up with this proposed amendment. I'd like to point out that our current printing contractor has provided excellent and timely services for our departments, and we've been very pleased with the action or activities that they've done in the printing process. Your approval of this amendment ensures that our ability to print anything needed for tax and the Board of Elections through the end of August 2022 at the original pricing, while providing printing and mailing services through the rest of the fiscal year at a new higher rate, while giving us time to also evaluate the RFP results and hopefully allow us to secure a new contract for our printing and mail service needs going forward. In case you wanted more, on another front, since our budget adoption, new developments affecting the Board of Elections have caused us to include additional funding needed for an anticipated large printing job regarding voting districts. While we're not fully sure this is mandated, we wanted to include it here as a matter of awareness and transparency, and Tim can answer questions about that in just a second. So our goal here is to try to not utilize the increased pricing that's contained that would start on September 1st in this amendment. Instead, we hope to be able to end this contract and accept a new 4-year contract based on the most recent RFP. The amendment allows us to continue in the short run at no increased cost while providing a means to continue services throughout the fiscal year if need be, while giving us time to evaluate the new RFP and potentially stand up a new printing contractor.
Would it make any sense to, if the deadline for you just got the bids in today, and I know there's some vetting, but what if your same bidder has bid again, and it seems to me there's an opportunity to maybe to act on that. I mean, I appreciate your idea of I guess what I don't know is and I don't know if I followed everything you said.
Yes, sir.
But it sounds to me like you're certainly looking on the mailing side, same price, but you're looking on the part that's going to go the rest of the fiscal year, maybe it was the printing side, was going to be the same. And the mailing side was going to be a higher price, and the gamble is there a better bid sitting in somebody's office on somebody's desk today now that would make all that moot? That's what I'm getting at.
Let me see if I can help clarify a couple of things that may help. The postage costs that we incur are passed on through from the cost for the cost from the Postal Service, and through a printing service, they give us the best rate possible based on bulk mailing. And so, but if the price of postage is increased by the Postal Service, those are simply passed on to us and are not really a part of our contracted price. What is the contracted price is actually the printing service itself. And so that element, so what we're talking about is the difference between to print a tax bill under our original contract was about 10 cents. And now it would be 12 cents after September 1st. So what this amendment does is it basically bought us 5 more months from April 1st through September 1st. It bought us those 5 months at no price increase from our original contract. And it it does start new pricing with a 22% increase as of September 1st through the rest of this fiscal year. For printing, for the printing side. Our hope is that the RFP that just came in today, we would be able to evaluate and end the contract that we're asking you to amend today.
Oh, okay.
And then start a new contract with whatever the low bidder is going forward.
I got you.
I got
you.
This second, I don't know if the pricing for September 1st that is in this amendment is lower or higher than what is in the RFP. I do not know that. But I should know that later today or certainly tomorrow.
But we've protected ourselves from the downside, is what is what you wanted.
Yeah,
he did.
I don't think he said that in the first review.
That's the punchline.
It sounded to me like we were locking in something, and then we would analyze these bids for 3 or 4 months, and we might, whatever, do something later. I'm sorry, got that.
My apologies.
I got to hand it to. I mean, essentially, what we had is a strange breach of contract, and then the necessity is. It takes a lot of work to get ready to send this stuff to him. And so then it all happened right there at the time when we send out both tax bills and also need a lot of ballots. And so anyway, these guys, they devised this and it's pretty amazing. So good job.
I think we're lucky to have both of them.
I would agree a whole lot. So, all right. And so next item is Tim Sugies. Tim obviously is getting ready for an election. It's a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between Forsyth County Board of Elections and the Resource Company Incorporated to provide temporary employment services for one-stop early voting. So for Board of Elections, Tim.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is a resolution for an agreement regarding our temporary employment services. We recently conducted an informal procurement process to identify from 3 local service providers, which include The Resource, Bradley Group, and BellFlex. I've provided in your packet a comparison of the pay rate schedule for all 3 companies, with The Resource and Bradley Group offering a 38% markup per pay rate and BellFlex offering a 32% markup. Our recommendation is to enter into agreement with The Resource, which is a company that we've been using and currently relying on for their temp services. The Resource not only supports client services for other governmental entity, but they also, besides Forsyth County, provide, they're 1 out of the 3 to have election services experience in addition to Forsyth County. Comparatively, The Resource has the capacity in terms of manpower, expertise, and an extensive existing pool of employees, along with local managerial infrastructure to adequately provide us the necessary staffing that's required. BellFlex and the Bradley Group neither have the experience in election staffing nor the infrastructure to support our unique staffing needs. And so based on the evaluation of this selection criteria, it's, again, our recommendation that we enter into agreement with The Resource Incorporated. I'll be glad to take any questions.
So Tim, it's a 3-year contract?
Yes, so this agreement will allow for a 3-year agreement. I've spoken to the county attorney's office, and with the challenges of election scheduling, and this year is a perfect example of that, where the primary election got delayed to May, which also coincides with the timing of the end of the fiscal year and terminations or expiration of contracts, that it would be difficult for us, similar to the previous contract that John was discussing. There's an ongoing need during that duration, and it would be difficult to do a procurement process and to do the evaluation at a time when we're needing that staffing.
Well, I'm a little confused on this one too, and I apologize. I may have drifted a little bit, but what were the actual bids from the 3 bidders? Who did you keep? And I see what you're recommending, but are you saying you did not consider the bids from the other 2 at all, when in fact they're all kind of, at least your composite scores are basically the same? So are you trying to tell me that because we didn't bid this soon enough, we're just going to stay with this one company?
No.
What are you telling me?
That's not. So my explanation for Commissioner Elamine is regarding the explanation for why it's a multi-year agreement rather than a one-year agreement, which is what we had previously. So what recently expired was a one-year agreement. I'm now presenting to you a request for a multi-year agreement so that will allow for efficiency in carrying out the temporary staffing needs that we need, especially at a time where just election schedules, it's challenging. We never know when it's going to happen. It could happen at any given time because of litigation or law changes. And so this offers us that flexibility. To answer your question, Dr. Martin, we did go through an informal procurement process. You see the scoring, the composite scores of all three companies. The Resource did score the highest. We looked at pricing. We conducted interviews. We've spoken to the representatives of all three companies. And, like I mentioned, the Resource has governmental experience with governmental entities, but in particular with election staffing services. So along with Forsyth County, they also provide election staffing services to Guilford County, whereas the other two companies lack that experience. Additionally, the Resource has the capacity, the staffing, and the expertise to provide us with the staffing needs that we have that's unique with regards to elections.
I'm having a hard time sort of with a contract for this amount of money for 3 years that's quite frankly not competitively bid. And I don't think it's magic, the work that's done that in terms of training and so forth. I mean, are there other companies that have governmental experience? I mean, there's got to be. I think there's got to be more competition in the arena than simply one person for a substantial contract over the 3-year period. You're looking at basically $2.5 million.
Right. It is a substantial amount. It's not so much just the governmental experience, but the elections experience. And the Resource, out of the three companies that we looked into, the Resource is the only one that has that elections experience. And additionally, they have that extensive pool of the employees that is necessary. So, I'll provide you some additional factors that we looked into. So for instance, one of the companies, their main office is in Greensboro. And so we'd have to, if for whatever reason, we needed to coordinate any onboarding, in-person onboarding, they would have to work remotely. They'd have to set up or establish a satellite office here in Winston to accommodate our needs. Whereas the Resources, they're based out of Winston and they can handle all of that business on site here physically in the county. Additionally, you look at their staffing and the Resource, they have their pool of employees. It does take almost an army of employees to accommodate, especially in staffing or one-stop sites. So depending on the election, we open between 5 to 17 early voting sites with 2 shifts per site for a 17-day duration. And so I'll give you, just to give you some figures, in 2020, we had in the upwards of 400 employees. And it takes a lot of people to try to recruit, to onboard, to get the paperwork, the background check, the necessary orientation and training, and the Resource has that experience.
Why don't you, it looks like that 2 of the companies had the exact same markup. The lower markup company was Belflex. Why don't we get the proposals from the Resource and Belflex just to the board? If you can get those to me or Ashley, we'll get them out to the board members and they can review those individual proposals and then any other considerations that the panel used in making the recommendation. So that'd be good. That'll get you some additional information, and then prior to going to next week's meeting, we'll, if there's still questions after you see those proposals.
Yeah, well, that's good. But I mean, the 400 people you're talking about are here, and this is just who they're going to work for. If they're going to work for Resource Services, they're going to work for XYZ Incorporated. I mean, it's not like the same pool of people to recruit for elections, they're still here. They're not going to disappear. So yes, do you have to do background checks, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, you do. But if you can save $500,000 over 3 years, and I bet some other companies that might be a little hungrier might be able to save that. I mean, I'm just sort of picturing this process. This is not It's not like you got to go find 400 people. The 400 people are here, and they've been doing it probably for a while.
Well, so the resource already has that pool of 400 people, whereas
But the
if we
pool
were to...
lives here, correct?
Right. But if we were to go with another company, they'd have to start from scratch. It's not like the resource would turn over that list of 400 people. Or
No, they wouldn't turn over the list, but I
employees.
believe you advertise. I believe if people say it's election time, I believe you know who those 400 people are. I mean, I believe we could find them, a lot of them. I'm just a little, for that amount of money, I kind of think there's got to be more competition in the management side of this.
Okay.
It seems to me.
Yeah, I'll provide that additional information that Dudley was asking. Hopefully
Yeah,
that'll...
you may see something in the proposal. My suspicion is you'll see something in the proposal that the committee did. I would share your concern, but the composite score is so low for the other firm that I think there's other considerations, frankly. But
Yeah, the Bradley Group was the one that was 840 and 880, and
yeah,
like I said, quite frankly, there's not much difference in all three of them, depending on how you score it. I mean, these are subjective scoring issues. I mean, I don't have a lot of stock in that particularly. I do have a lot of stock in what people say they can do something for and what they're willing to commit on paper, and do they have liability insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think we protect ourselves with any vendor. But okay.
Yeah.
Tim, if I I do have a question. Thank you for being the subject matter expert on this because I don't know. But my question is relative to the early voting sites. Are these individuals still being used on Election Day as well?
Yeah, so several of those folks do participate as serving as precinct officials on Election Day. Not all, and that's through word of mouth. But yeah, it's not a requirement that they work both early voting and Election Day. They are separate. And in fact, it's the employment status is even separate, where the folks that work through the resource for early voting, they are constituted as employees, whereas the precinct officials, it's a 1 day.
We take care of.
Right,
Okay,
that we
that's
do
what I
take
wanted
care
to
of
be clear
ourselves.
Okay, for the 108 precincts?
Yes.
All right, so
Yeah.
that stipend comes out of our budget, not the resource?
Right, and there's also statutory differences. So the statute mandates that the County Board of Elections handles the appointment of precinct judges in coordination with the local parties.
Right. And one more thing, just so that I can kind of help Dr. Martin, if I may, Commissioner Martin. So these individuals are supporting, the resource folks are supporting the individuals on ground to do the curbside voting as well?
Yes.
Right. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, but that's a really complex process.
I'm not arguing the service, et cetera, but I'm just arguing that there are probably the same, and it's who's getting the management fee here. I mean, I think probably you could probably find those folks again and.
Well, it sounds like Tim's
probably
done
do
his
it.
due diligence, but I mean,
Well,
like I
the
said,
due diligence that I don't see is a bid. That's what I don't see.
he's gonna share.
We've got this other part. I'm sorry. I just disagree with you. on
That's
that.
all right, Tim. Just share whatever you have.
And,
Thank you.
and by the way, is this cost more than we paid last year? We had a 1-year agreement with these guys last year. Is this bid higher? And how much higher?
It is the same rate.
Exactly the same rate as it was last year.
The markup rate is the same. In fact, I confirmed with the other two companies that whether the markup rate had changed within the past 2 years, and it's remained the same. And in terms of what we paid the early voting workers, that's been consistent. And we determined that pay rate. It's just the markup, the fee that we paid the agency is what they decide. And, the resource, they believe that based on current market rates, which I'm sure the other two companies will base their markup rates on, it is a competitive market out there, and that is what they factor. And, all three companies have indicated to me that, there is the possibility. I may have to come back next year, even though if the board approves a multi-year agreement, similar to the print and mailing contract, where if there's a change in the markup, they might come back to me and say, we need to up the markup. And but as for the past 2 years, they firmly believe that they're basing it on current market rates that is competitive.
I'll look forward to looking at the proposals.
Yeah.
Tim, two quick questions, please. What's been your experience working with the resource company?
So we have been working with them for the past 2 decades. So I started in 2016, and that's the main company that we've been using.
And the second question, I was involved in a pretty detailed discussion at our latest NACO convention about the threats being presented to some of our innocent employees who work for the Board of Elections, across the board, really. And I raised the issue about them being charged with felonies, but for providing a threat to someone who makes minimum and sometimes, as far as I'm concerned, below minimum wage. They're doing it as a civic duty. They don't do it for the $186, and they shouldn't be threatened or cajoled or bullied because of the work they do for the citizenry. So I hope at one point you might consider coming to us with a request to increase what we pay the people who work for us on the day of elections. It's very critical they get some kind of additional compensation because they've really been hassled unnecessarily by some extreme people out there who like to think they got a big, bullying bat. But there's always a bigger bullying bat in the neighborhood somewhere. I'll end with that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. All right, we got 3 reports: April 2022 Human Resources Report, May 2022 Human Resource Report, and the June contribution-based benefit cap report. I do have.
Excuse me just a minute. Could I ask you a question on 18 and 19, the human resource?
Yes.
Is the shortage improving any at all? I noticed that April is kind of concerning. There were 34 employed and 36 separated.
Right.
That's not making much headway.
Right.
And, it was a bit better in May, but are things improving at all?
I asked that question to our HR director and some of the staff, and they seem to think that the applicant pool is more robust than it has been. And so you don't really see the downstream piece of that until later. But, and I've even asked folks in business, that I talked to if they sense that, with the curtailment of the pandemic unemployment and then, some of the other ways to support yourself that were available out there during COVID, it seems more optimistic to me that folks are kind of ready to get back to work. And so we will hope, but is it remarkably better? No. Or, do we still have folks who are leaving the workforce at pretty high levels? HR is extremely busy. They appreciate the additional staff support you gave them, but we're not out of the woods yet, I don't think. So.
Well, like the ones that were separated in April, like how many of those were retirements?
Yeah, good question. We'll dive into that. So I'll try to get some answers on that. That'd be great. The only other item I had that was part of the agenda is Minor Barnett caught me actually outside and let me know that he had just received some EPA dollars. Minor, if you can come up, that if it's satisfactory to the board, it's all federal money. It replaces some equipment that we've been trying to replace. It's got like a 21-day turnaround on it, and if it's satisfactory, if I could add it as a one-time item, that'd be great, or an added item.
Sure. So thank you for this opportunity. After negotiating and communicating with the EPA for over a year, I was not anticipating that this morning at 7 o'clock I would receive a notice of award of $85,000 of federal funding distributed pursuant to the American Rescue Plan through Section 103 of the Clean Air Act, which is the section of the Clean Air Act for monitoring of fine particulate matter, which is one of the 6 criteria pollutants and one of the 2 primary pollutants of concern nationwide. There's no matching requirement whatsoever. Our only obligation is to use the $85,000 to purchase the equipment for which it was pre-approved during our negotiations, when I basically said, if you give us the money, here's what we'll do with it. There's some equipment that they would like to see us purchase. They've been encouraging us to purchase this equipment for several years. And now that the money is available with no matching requirement and no other obligations, I think it would be a good time to take advantage of this opportunity to improve our air pollution monitoring network and the equipment we use to monitor fine particulate matter.
Congratulations, Minor. That's really good. I mean, that took some extra work on your part to get it done, I know, but God, no.
I did have confidence that we would be awarded the funding, but they didn't notify us or give us a heads up of the timing. And then at 7 o'clock this morning, I received a notice of award, which is great, but it was a surprise. But we have 21 days to draw it down and order the equipment.
Thanks, Minor. Appreciate you letting us know, and we knew some of this was going to happen with the deadlines with some of this federal money, so very good. The only other item I have, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, is on closed session motion, unless there's anything else from the board.
Oh, there's one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Happy birthday to Commissioner Martin.
Oh, thank you.
How old is Don Martin?
Too old.
Very wise. All right. Need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session, discuss a matter to consult with the attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege, between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged pursuant to provision of North Carolina General Statute 143.3, 1811A3. No other business come before the board. After this meeting, the closed session meeting will be adjourned.
Second.
Aye.
All right.